Hello everybody, today's video is just a bit of an update really on my ownership of the Leica M2 and my thoughts on Leica now that I've had the camera quite a few months after buying it, and I've had it serviced and I'm using it every weekend, and I've shot probably about 30 at least rolls of film on it, and Tri-X, Fomapan, lots of different Ilford film. And I've when you get a Leica, they're obviously very expensive unless you get a bit of a bargain. I definitely paid less for my Leica M2 than what they normally go for. It's kind of in the 500 mark, and I've seen them go for about 800, but or more. Some of them are almost like £1,000. So depending on the condition is really everything. But and this one does have a bit of a dent on the rear shoulder, and uh, could have you can get them in better condition. But anyway, so after many months of ownership and shooting lots of film, and I thought I'd do a quick update video on my thoughts on the M2, and some of the things that I sort of learned along the way. Because if you're thinking of getting a Leica film camera, particularly one without a meter, like an M2, an M3, or an M4, and you're kind of thinking, well, if I get one, I'm probably going to buy the cheaper lenses to start with and then kind of see how I go as time goes on. Then you're probably going down a similar journey to what I've gone down, and you start buying accessories like grips and things as well, which I've done, and I'll kind of go through my thoughts. Okay, so first of all, absolutely love the camera. It's never getting sold. This is my kind of forever Leica, and I'll hand it down to the children one day if one of them's into photography. Otherwise, it'll be a bit of an heirloom to them. Reasons I love it are it's smaller than a say something like a Nikon F2 or a bigger SLR. The lenses generally are smaller. There's something lovely about using Rangefinder. When you look through the viewfinder, that you can see what's inside and outside of the frame of what you're going to shoot, which is a completely unique thing that you get with rangefinders. And with an SLR, you look through the lens and you see exactly what you're going to get, which is great, but you don't see what's outside of the frame lines of what you're going to get. And so Leicas give you that thing where you can see outside the frame lines. That is definitely a unique thing about rangefinders, and Leicas particularly. The focusing patch, the way that you focus with a Leica, where you line up the two images, and when it becomes one image, then you know your photo's in focus. Again, very unique to rangefinders. And Leica, one of the best at doing that. Their rangefinder patches are fantastic, provided your camera's in good condition and it's been serviced. So things that I'm kind of thinking of at the moment are the camera. I've had it serviced. It's now like a different camera really to the one that I got, and the reason why I would say is that the viewfinder is now incredibly clear. The frame lines are really bright. The focusing patch is 10 times better than it was. I sent it to CameraWorks UK in England, and that's sort of Alan Starkey, him and his son that service those cameras, and they are the best of the best really. If you send your camera to there, then it's that's the best place you can go, I think, in the UK certainly. And people send their cameras to them from all over the world, so they're doing something right. So that was definitely money well spent. It is a good couple of £100 to get your camera serviced there, if not more. I had the Zeiss Glass put in as well, which means that the normal glass you kind of get in it, if you think that glass has been in there for 30-40 years, it's got lots of little marks and scratches on, and that stops when you're looking through the viewfinder, it being as clean and clear as you'd want. The Zeiss Glass seems to be resistant to fingerprints, so again, when you look through, it's as clean and clear as you'd like it, because you don't have those fingerprints there, which is great. I also had the frame lines. There's like a bright line mask upgrade that they do, which makes the frame lines much clearer and brighter, and means that you can't kind of erode over time, which is something you get with older Leicas, where anyway, I won't go into the mechanics of it, but It was real. That's the best thing I could have done was get my camera serviced. Things that I've done that I think maybe it wasn't worth it were, so I bought one of these light meters, and I'm kind of thinking I'm going to be using this less and less. It's great. It meters reasonably accurately. It's better actually in low light if I'm walking around indoors and I've got the lens opened up to say f2.5, something like that. I'm shooting in low light. I'm going to be shooting at say 1/15th of a second, 30th of a second, maybe 60th of a second, depending on the speed of the film. It tends to meter quite well. If I'm out on a really sunny day, it's bold, dark shadows. It's definitely a sunny 16 thing where it'll be if I'm shooting a 100 speed film, then it'd be 1/25th of a second, and on the lens it would be f16. I tend to find with this meter it'll go, oh no, shoot it at f8 or f5.6, and I just know that that's not quite right, so I'll ignore it. But I'm kind of thinking I'm not going to use this as much anymore. I think the reason to get a meterless Leica is to get better at being able to look at the shadows and look at your light and meter by eye. And I've got my mobile phone that has a light meter app on it. So if I'm indoors and I'm like, not quite sure actually if this is 30th of a second or 60th of a second, I can use the app, take a reading when I need it. But these aren't that expensive, so I would say it's worth getting one and seeing how you get on with it. I also bought the grip. The grip is lovely. When that's on the camera, I won't screw it on, but it is lovely. But the kind of point of a grip really is to help you hold the camera, probably when it's got a big lens on it. So with an SLR, kind of makes more sense to have because with an SLR you're going to have a lot bigger lenses, and you kind of think, oh, this is quite a heavy setup. I could do that extra grip, but with a Leica, you don't really get that. All the lenses are pretty small, so I'm starting to think actually, I'm glad I got the grip, but I don't think I'm going to be using that as much as well. I think actually Leica got it right, and it doesn't really necessarily need the grip, and the meters are kind of nice to have. What's good about this grip, which I discovered, and this is the M grip. If you can see it there, M grip or GMP grip, sometimes it's called, they were made in America, really well made grips. It bolts in on the corner because that's where Leicas bolt in. Most cameras, it's in the tripod holes in the middle, but this camera, Olympus Pen F, bolts in on the corner. And sure enough, if I go like that, like that, it fits the Olympus Pen F perfectly. I mean, it's a perfect fit. So I'm going to be keeping the grip for this, because with the Pen F, I'm putting bigger, heavier lenses on it. I'm mounting all my Nikon glass on here. So the grip's going to be staying, but for the Pen F. So that's worked out really well. So if you've got one of them grips and you've got a Pen F, worth a try. Okay, so lenses, since I got the camera, I started off with 35mm screw mount Russian lens. It's the Jupiter 12, and it's got this, I'll show you here, it's got this whacking great rear element like that recedes into the camera, like that. And do you know what? The pictures from this lens, stop it down a bit, they're really good and they're really sharp. And it's a small lens and it weighs almost nothing, and you put an adapter on it and it fits on the camera. Definitely worth getting this lens if you have just bought yourself a Leica M. Even if you've got really great glass, it's a fun lens to get. They're not that expensive, made in the USSR, so it's quite cool. Things I don't like about the lens really is one thing, which is to change the aperture, so f2.8 to f22, you have to turn the front of the lens like that. So you're focusing here and you're changing aperture here. So when you're looking through the viewfinder and holding the camera and you reach over to focus, it's so easy to change the aperture by mistake. And then you have to turn, look down the lens, look at the little white dot, and then you can see the white dot there, and then turn the aperture to match the white dot, and then really consciously make sure you do not touch that. And I've put a filter on which extends this out a little bit. Without that filter on, it's actually quite hard to get in there and change the aperture. So that's the only thing with this lens, is you kind of have to really be careful. Get a filter on it, makes it a bit easier, and then be careful not to touch it by mistake too much. But otherwise, that is an absolute bargain lens, worth getting. Jupiter 12. Okay, another lens I got, Russian, was the Jupiter 8. So fantastic, really great lens. There are people on eBay selling these that have fully serviced them, and they've kind of polished them up to have this really lovely chrome look. And so this one has been basically permanently converted to M mount, and they call it shimmed, which is where they adjust the focal plane slightly, and that means that this lens will, when you mount it on your M body, digital or film, it'll be correctly in focus and lined up as it should be. So you kind of know you're getting a good copy if you can get one of these ones that's been sort of professionally converted. Otherwise, you can pick them up cheap. I mean, they're still pretty cheap, but you can pick them up cheap and try a few till you get a good one. Then the next lens I got, so this is actually a Leica lens. And oh god, I keep forgetting the names now. So I think it's a Sumatar 5cm f2, so it's a 50mm lens. This really fantastic lens. It's collapsible. It weighs a bit more than the other two, but it's fantastic. And these can be had for about 150. If you know, that's about what I paid. So you're not paying crazy Leica prices for a Leica lens. Something about the collapsible ones, I don't think they're as popular, but that's crazy because these are such good lenses. So worth getting if you can see one for under 200. And you just need to check that the front element isn't too marked and scratched. This one had a filter on it all its life. It hasn't got a mark. It's in great condition, hasn't got a mark on it. So I'm never selling that lens. I have also got this little Russian lens here as well. This is another 50 f2, another Jupiter 8. So it's just a different version. And they're worth getting because you can pick them up cheap, and it's screw mount, and you just adapt screw mount lenses to Leica M mount with a £5 adapter, £10 adapter. And then on the most recent lens I've got was, because to be honest, I'm covered. This is such a good 50mm lens, this Sumatar. And then I've got this nice Jupiter 8 as well, which isn't a bad 50mm, but this 35mm was starting to do my head in a bit with the aperture ring being on the front like that, and I wanted something a bit smaller, and so I got this Voigtlander, the Color Scopar, and it's the 35mm f2.5 MC. So it's a screw mount, and you just put an M mount adapter, screw to LTM to screw mount adapter, and then you can put it on. And these were sold with the Voigtlander Bessa camera. And so sometimes you can get these quite cheap. I got this very cheap because I saw somebody selling a Voigtlander Bessa with the lens, and I said, I'm only interested in the lens, I don't want the body. Would you consider relisting it and selling me just the lens? And they went, yeah, okay. And so I paid very little for the lens, and then they sold the body on its own, and they actually got a really good price for the body, so they were really happy, and I was really happy. So worth keeping an eye out for these Voigtlander lenses that were sold on Bessas. What I would have done if he'd not wanted to sell the lens separately is I would have bought the Voigtlander Bessa with the lens and then just sold the body off, and then that would have got me the money back for almost all of the price of the lens. So that's a good way to try and get these Voigtlander lenses cheaper, is to sometimes buy one with the camera body and then just sell the camera body off. The other thing I've done since getting this camera was I covered it in another video, but this is kind of a bit of an update video. So in another video I explained that I'd converted it, so I'd screwed this bit in, which you can see if that's going to focus. That bit there goes on, and then you get a take-up spool which goes in and stays in the camera, which looks like this. And this is the rapid load spool. So the idea is you drop the film in and you just poke. So this doesn't come out of the camera. This stays in the camera. You drop the film in and you sort of poke it through the slot like you would more on like an M4 and M6. And you don't have to take the spool out to put film in. And that these kits are quite expensive. I did manage to get it for less than what they normally go for. And I was shooting a lot of Tri-X, so I was popping the film in here, dragging it over, and you basically there's a hang on, let me see if I can show you. There's a gap there, and you basically pop the film in through the gap, and that's it. Job done. Put the back on, and this bit holds the film in place, and it worked really well. As long as I was shooting Tri-X and HP5, it worked really well. And I did find it a bit easier, a little bit quicker than the take-up spool that normally comes with an M2, and the same one that comes with an M3, where you have to remove the spool, feed it into the spool, and then drop them both in together and kind of like wiggle it around. But I am shooting Fomapan 100, which looks like this, which is a really flat film, and it also develops incredibly flat as well, actually. But there's something, I don't know what it is about this film. This film will not work with this take-up spool. It doesn't matter if I go like that, and then you'd feed it in every single time. Whether I put the back on or not, when I advance it, what happens is, so if I can show you. No. So what you would do, you do this with the spool in the camera, but I'm just taking it out to show you. So you'd pull it across, and you make a kind of this sort of shape, and you basically drop it in like that. But so it would be like that. But these wouldn't come out of the camera. This would be in here, and you would just drop the film down that groove, and it would go in. And every single time I would advance the film, that would happen. This film just doesn't, I don't know what it is, it's a bit shinier or something, or it's a bit thinner. It just will not stay inside that spool. So I end up having to take the spool out, wind it round, and feed it through, and get it really tightly on the spool, then put it back in, and then it works. Which, to be honest, if I'm doing that, I might as well just use the spool that came with the Leica M2. So Fomapan 100 is just my new favourite film. It's cheap. It's the cheapest black and white film I think you can probably get. Maybe there's is it Kentamir or one of the other, but this is definitely the cheapest or the second cheapest film you can get. It's 100 ASA ISO, so it's like a fine grain black and white film, and it's just lovely. I really like it, and I'm now going to be buying it in bulk and bulk loading with this to make it even cheaper. And then it works out, if you're buying this 100 feet of this and bulk loading, works out just over £2 a roll for fantastic black and white film. So you can't really argue with that. And so this will be going back, not back, but I will be I will be selling the kit. So this and this comes off. So I'll just do this quickly with a screwdriver. If you can see, and this is going to come off. Hang on. There we go. And then I'm going to sell it to somebody else who doesn't shoot Fomapan 100, hopefully. So that bit comes off. So that's now stock. So it's that and that you get, and then it goes in a little box like this. So open this up, and I've actually this was a really great set because I got all the original instructions, got the box, I got the original sticker, although it doesn't stick anymore, but you could put some double tape on there, and that shows you how it. Let me hold that the right way up. That shows you how it goes in. like that. As I say, shooting Ilford and Kodak film, no problem at all. Something about Fomapan, it just does not go with it. So this is going to be going. This is the original spool that has no slot to drop it in. See the difference? So that's the difference, is you can drop it in without taking the spool out of the camera body. But this one is the original, where you have to you feed it in through anyway. So that's going in, and that's going back on top, and like that. And whoops. Now classic mistake. Obviously, I'm a Leica novice. When you put the base plate on, this is because I'm doing a video, so I'm trying to think about too many things at once. Always close the back, then put the thing on, put the base plate on, and then that holds. By putting that holds the back there. So that is now back to how it was when I bought it, although it's now been fully serviced. So it's fantastic. And this and this. The instructions and the little sticker will be going in the box, and I shall be putting them on eBay soon. If you're after one of these sets, I definitely recommend, if you shoot Kodak or Ilford film, which is probably most people, buying a set like this. It does work really well with those films. But I thought I'd give you that kind of feedback, really, because that's just kind of what I've observed. And that was it. I mean, absolutely loving Leica M2. Definitely, I would say there's no such thing as a cheap Leica. So, okay, paid 500 quid or so, just over 500 quid for an M2 in pretty damn good condition. But then had to pay a good couple of hundred on top to get the thing working really well. I could have paid, say, 700 or 800 for one that had already been serviced, and then, so, you know, if you get a cheap one, you're probably gonna have to pay to get it serviced anyway. So you kind of got to make your mind up whether which way you want to go with that. I decided, because I want to choose who services it, I want it to be serviced kind of by somebody who I think is the best. I kind of thought, actually, I'd rather pay less, get a cheaper one, and then I pay for it to be serviced, and I know what's been done, and I know when it was done. Whereas if you pay a bit more and get one where the seller says, oh yeah, it was recently serviced, you kind of don't really know, unless they're sending you all the paperwork with it to say that it was. And okay, so that was it, and I'll do some more videos. Probably I'm going to do the next video on bulk loading, I think, and a bit about that, because that's the thing that I'm getting into at the moment. If you're liking these videos, subscribe and like them, and I will make more. Thank you.